melt inside an ocean wave.
Today on UVA Legends podcast, I have Ahmad Hawkins, media star, UVA football wide receiver and defensive back, and arena football player for many years. Ahmad, great to meet you. Thanks for doing this.
I appreciate you having me. Great to be here.
Oh, of course. Well, you know, a lot of people, the younger Who's, may only know you for your media work because you played in the 90s, you know, much younger than me. But let me just kind of go through your record. You're a Hampton High graduate, played for the great Mike Smith. I think you were 96, 97.
My last year was 96.
96. Okay.
Yeah.
You caught passes from the great Ronald Curry, who ended up playing for UNC and also, I believe, the Raiders, or at least he coached for the Raiders, right? Yeah.
No, he played for the Raiders.
Yeah. And came to UVA, 4-year starter, overcame some injuries in your first year. Had the famous catch against Virginia Tech in the famous celebration. I think you went to 3 bowl games. You played on George Welsh's last team. And then, as I was saying before, I think you did you played for the Kansas City Chiefs for a year. Then you did 10 years of arena football. And and then you got into media work, an incredible record of media work. I think some of your first work was with Jerry Miller, your homeboy from Hampton, or at least 757. That was on TV on NBC 29. You had the Inside the Hawks Nest show on 1070. I used to listen to 1070. I was at UVA. Yeah. And then you did the Ball Hawk show. This is really interesting. In 2014, you started a show where it was a hip hop rap show. You were DJing. You were giving sports commentary. You used to do a little bit of everything. And then, currently, the Ball Hawk show podcast, you have the Walkthrough, which is a great show where you actually walk with an athlete through the UVA grounds, just kind of chatting about what's going on. Great YouTube stuff. People should definitely check that out if they haven't. You do the Cavalier Countdown before the game. You do the Lockdown with my boy Tony Covington, another podcast. You're also a CEO of Ball Hawk LLC. I know you do some motivational speaking. That's a lot. Did I get most of that right, Ball Hawk?
Yeah, you got it, man. You got it.
that's a lot. Well, I want to start kind of, with your media stuff, which is how a lot of people, as I said before, know you. You started out in traditional media, doing TV and radio. And now a lot of athletes and all of us have gotten into like the YouTube and kind of like, the more of the internet type media. Which do you prefer? Have you enjoyed the last several years kind of stepping outside traditional media and doing more of the YouTube channels and the other types of media?
Yeah, I mean, I love it all. I just like to just talk about sports and interact with fans. If I had a choice, man, that's a great question. I mean, if I had a choice, I think I'll enjoy doing podcasting because it's more flexibility and I could just always record, because there's so many ways I can create episodes, whether it's through Twitter Spaces or just cutting my mic on by itself or going Facebook Live or going live on YouTube. So the flexibility is there for the podcasting field as far as just doing it anytime I want. But if I wanted to do like the ACC network or Virginia Sports Network, that's time. That's a certain time you have to do it. You have to be certain places. So now with just social media and just with Zoom or StreamYard, podcasting is the way to go because you can just do so much with it.
Yeah. Does it give you an extra measure of credibility that you've been on TV, you've been on radio, even though, you may choose to do the podcasting method because it gives you flexibility as it does me. But doesn't that traditional media give you extra credibility because you've done that as well?
Yeah, it could. I mean, I don't know because see, it depends on the audience. I put it like that. Depends on the audience. Like if I'm doing the Twitter Spaces and somebody that's running the Twitter handle for like a ESPN or Fox Sports Network or one of those, big conglomerate head honchos come in, then it's probably an advantage because I can rely on what I learned on the Jerry Miller Show or what I learned on WINA with Jay James. So they can see that I am polished in a sense. But
Yeah.
When you're just talking to just regular fans and this barbershop talk, they don't care anything about that, you know, because it's almost like you're a target now because they want to show that they can do what you do without having to, you know, be cookie cutter. So it just depends on the audience.
Yeah, and also it seems like, you know, I don't know if you went to media school or anything, but you
I
seem to,
did.
it's been trial and error. You just kind of found
Mm-hmm.
your own way and tried different things, and you haven't seemed to be restrained by
Mm-hmm.
what everyone else is doing. Like I said, you were doing hip hop, you were playing records,
Yeah.
and you were doing sports commentary on the same show.
Yeah, I just try to be flexible, and it goes back to my playing days. Like the more you can do, right? So if I'm playing receiver and I can also play DB and I can also play running back and I can also be a backup quarterback, like the more positions I play, the more valuable I am. So I take that same approach in the media. Like I don't just want to subject myself to just being a color analyst. I want to demonstrate that I can also do sideline reporting. I can also do play-by-play if it called for me to do that. So I just want to be the ultimate team player. And that's what I was always taught, even when I was young, with my grandmother, just not putting myself in the box and not having limits. And I took public speaking classes. I did journalism classes a lot in high school, did public speaking in college. And, you know, it paid off. I did drama also in college. So all those things I did outside of football, the man upstairs definitely had a plan for me once football was done, because I'm using all those resources that I was just taking things just to take it. Because when I was in high school, I was just taking journalism just because my senior year, I had taken all of my requirements. So I needed to fill those credits, you know, to be eligible. So I just took a bunch of journalism classes. So, yeah, the more you can do, the better, in my opinion.
Yeah. And do you feel like your years of pro football and as well as college and high school, it gives you added credibility as well when you talk to the athletes? They know you've been in the arena yourself, and you can identify with what they're going through.
Yeah, that definitely helps because they understand I could like empathize, sympathize with their situations. Not like I try to make sure that I'm not coming off with truly judging them, but just trying to figure out what really took place. And it's a gift and a curse because a lot of times, since I'm not overly critical, I could be deemed as being an apologist for the university when I'm reviewing tape and when I'm critiquing coaches. But I just feel like my style is I'm just a caring person. I'm a super positive person. So it takes a lot for me to quote be negative and see things of not like see no hope at the end of the tunnel. And a lot of times I take a lot of rant from fans because they just want somebody to rant, and I just can't rant. But I got an alter ego that'll playfully rant. But at the end of the day, man, I'm just a positive person, and I think they appreciate that. I'd rather be honest with them in a way that it can be received and not catch feelings versus, I might be speaking the truth, my delivery is totally off and they don't hear the truth. They just hear the tone that I'm using.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, Ahmad. I was asked to come on a radio show in DC to talk about Michael Graham. You might be too young, but he played with Georgetown with Patrick Ewing. And I had done a podcast with him, interview with him, and Butch McAdams picked it up and he liked it and wanted to talk to me about the interview. Well, when he got me on the show, he started talking about Georgetown basketball. And last year they were struggling. And so he wanted to talk about Patrick Ewing, how, you know, he wanted me to kind of say Patrick Ewing is not, they should fire him and it's time to give up. And, you know, Patrick Ewing was one of my boyhood idols. I'm not coming on the radio talking bad about Patrick Ewing. I don't have that in me. And other people can do that. We can get Stephen A. Smith. We can get other people to talk negative, but that's not kind of who I am. So I can kind of identify you because you know what those at. What UVA is 0-4, 0-5.
On 5, yeah.
On 5. And, you know, they had a tough loss this week. A lot of positives in that game. And people want to be negative. I can't even go in the group chats on Facebook anymore because they're just burying us. And I feel for the athletes. I feel for the coach. I want them to be successful.
Yeah, and it's tough because, you know, I build relationships with any coach that's coaching our young men. I try to be just that positivity for the players. So I build organic relationships with them. So it's one thing for me to be frustrated, but it's another for me to feed the fire and go on social media and really go in on them when I can just pick up the phone and just let them know how I feel and let them know it's coming from a place of love, and everything doesn't have to take place on Twitter or Facebook. So a lot of times I just refrain. Like, that's the beauty of being a podcast. I could just cut my mic on and just talk. So if somebody asks me a question, and I answer the question and they don't like it, they're just deem it as an excuse or come on, ball hawk. And I'm just like, I'm giving you my honest opinion out of respect of the relationships that I have, because if you and I are very good friends and you're in the public eye and you do something wrong, as your friend, you would want me to communicate with you first. And then if I do go to Twitter, the way I present it should be different than somebody who don't know you.
Yeah.
You know, so I just ask, I always tell fans, like, I understand how you can just tweet certain things because you don't have a personal relationship. And that's fine, because I'll do that with pros I don't know. Like when I talk about pro basketball or the NFL, I could be more critical because I don't have a personal relationship with them. But if I get to that day where I have to talk to them face to face and they heard what I said, now I got to stand there and listen to them and be like, hey, man, you said X, Y, and Z. And I got to be like, yeah, that was before I knew you. Now I really know you. It's a little different.
Yeah. Well, what did you think about the spat between Charles Barkley and Michael Jordan? I'm not sure if you heard about it, but
yeah,
it's kind of what you're talking about. Jordan and Barkley are friends, and Barkley, he's an honest guy, and he doesn't. Barkley doesn't pile on people. He just says he says his truth, and I think he just made a remark about Michael Jordan as an owner, and Jordan was just pissed. I mean, they didn't talk for a while, and I think he was upset that Charles didn't just call him and just say, look, if you felt that way. So how do you feel about that little spat? I mean, these guys, they make so much money. They're incredibly successful, but
it just goes to show it doesn't matter how successful you are, how much money you make, you still have feelings, and certain people can hurt your feelings. You may think that somebody makes so much more money than you that your voice isn't important, but they may respect you enough that they've always cared about what you said. And the thing with Charles and Michael is that I remember that old Oprah Winfrey episode with them being on, and you saw how close they were. And I just felt like Mike probably thought like, hey, man, you could have called me first. Tell me that first. Because now if you tell me, like if you say, Ball Hawk, I ain't like your last episode, and I felt like you did X, Y, and Z wrong, and we talking on the phone, and you be like, I'm going to say the same thing in my podcast, I know that you're going to do it. So I'm fine, because we talked and you let me respond. Like we had it out as friends. I may not like it, but I'm gonna respect your platform. I'm like, hey man, you got to do what you got to do. At least you gave me the heads up in a sense. Yeah. It's a little tough when you get blindsided by people you feel like is in your corner, your friend. And I think Mike is always like Charles is going to be Charles, and then Charles has to understand that Mike is going to be Mike. Like he know Mike hold grudges, so he wasn't surprised that Mike held a grudge. And I think Mike wasn't truly surprised that Charles did what he did, but he was, because he felt like Charles could have just called him. So, hey, man, those are two great players. You hope they get over it and become cool again.
Yeah, it's funny because I think a lot of times it's like first world problems to us. I remember like during the pandemic when Michael Jordan came out with that great documentary.
Yeah.
And him and Isaiah were holding on to this thing. And I think the rest of the world was like, let me get something straight. We're in the middle of a pandemic. You guys got more money than we could ever spend. And Isaiah Thomas is holding on to this Olympic snub back in 1992. And the rest of us, and I didn't even know I didn't even remember that had happened. And if you asked me about Isaiah Thomas's career, I would say he had a great career. He won championships with the distance. But they were holding on to this, and you could just tell the emotion on both of them. It was unbelievable.
And it's amazing because you talked about Isaiah and Michael. Like Isaiah and Magic had that sit down, and how the universe works. Shaq and Kobe got to have that sit down, and then shortly after, Kobe passed away. So it just goes to show that it's a gift and a curse, because their egos and how they hold on to certain things, like their shortcomings, to use it as fuel. Once they're done playing, they don't know how to turn that off, in a sense. So the same, Isaiah, as great as he is, and I remember being young and seeing that it was Stockton up there. And then like I was so young, I didn't realize that Isaiah wasn't there. I just thought maybe he retired. But when I saw that documentary, and I heard stories before the documentary, but it kind of goes to show when they start talking to other guys how nobody really cared for Isaiah for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, also I mean, you might, again, he had Lambert on his team. He was dirty.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
the only guy on that team people liked was Joe Dumars. I
Joe
remember,
Dumars.
I interviewed Grant Hill. I was lucky enough to get Grant, and one thing about Grant was always likable. So he came to
Yep.
the Pistons right after all that happened, and
Mhm.
he was always able to keep his kind of head above water, as was Dumars.
Yep.
Everyone hated the rest of them. So,
Mhm.
but anyway, let's talk about how you guys started in sports. 757 people are so loyal to their area, and we grew up. I'm from Northern Virginia, and I played a little
Okay.
football and stuff. But we grew up in awe of downstate, the teams down there. In football, you guys were just amazing. Hampton was just so amazing in football. It really wasn't until like the Hampton teams of Aaron Mundy and those guys, and then Iverson, and then the whole Boo Williams thing, where the Peninsula became great in basketball too. Before that, it was just a football area to us. Maybe the Norfolk and Virginia Beaches basketball. But how did you get started playing sports and playing football?
My dad got me started. My dad went to Huntington, and he played for a great team, undefeated team at Huntington. That was great. So when people always talk about my Hampton High team, the people at home always say who would win between my dad's team at Huntington and my team at Hampton High School. So I was, I just grew up seeing sports. Like my grandfather and my dad were baseball and football guys. My grandfather was more of a baseball guy, but even my Aunt Linda, my dad's sister, was like the Cheryl Miller of the neighborhood. Like she was the one girl that would just beat up on the boys as far as running track and doing things that was physical. So I got to see my cousin Sean Hamlet, who is my Aunt Linda's son. He went to Florida State. So he was the one guy that inspired me that I could play college football, because a guy that I shared a room with for so many years went to Hampton High School and then went to Florida State. So that was my motivation. Like my dad played, but then he went to Hampton Institute, had a tryout for the Redskins when they were the Redskins, got cut, and then went into the Army. He was also a baseball player too. So I didn't understand anything after high school until my cousin Sean. So when he went to Florida State, we grew up in Newport News, and when he went to Hampton High School, and I saw Hampton got him into college. I had family that lived in Hampton. My grandmother lived in Hampton. So I moved with my grandmother in Hampton, Big Mama, my mom's mom, and to go to Hampton High School. And once I got to Hampton High School, I just trusted Coach Smith and Coach Mitchell and Coach Mann and Coach Gilliam and how they worked us, and never questioned anything they wanted from us, because I just felt like he was going to be my ticket out of the 757 as far as that area, so I could go to high school. Because I knew about Norfolk State, I knew about Hampton University, and I used to think those were the only colleges. I didn't know about UVA or Florida or Florida State, Nebraska, until I started seeing them on TV. And I started going to Florida, Tallahassee, and seeing my cousin play. So that's when I was exposed to. I didn't know who Florida State was. I didn't know their tradition. So when Charlie Ward's there, and Derek Brooks and my cousin Sean is there, and they winning national championships. They beat Frazier in Nebraska for the national championship. Like that blew my mind away, man. So that I always wanted football just to be my vehicle out of my current situation. Even though my grandparents and my dad and my mom tried to shield me away from the bad stuff, I still was affected by the bad things, but introducing me to sports really helped keep me positive and get me out of my current situation.
Yeah, you mentioned Huntington. Was that the black school in Hampton?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So I'm not familiar. I guess they probably integrated in late '60s. So
Yeah.
I guess, yeah. So did Huntington ever play Hampton in football? They never played.
No, and ironically, when I played for Doris Miller, literally D American and D National, we practiced at Huntington at the same field my dad became known for, scoring touchdowns and stuff.
Wow. Did you also play basketball, run track, or play baseball?
Yeah, I played basketball, played baseball. So I was more of a football, baseball player. I played some basketball, but back then I just used my right hand and my speed to get to where I had to go. But I was heavy into baseball, I think my only true regret in life is that I stopped playing baseball after my sophomore year in high school. But then I started running track. So I utilized track to help my football. So even though I stopped playing baseball, I fell in love with track, and track definitely helped my football career.
Yeah. Well, we mentioned a little bit about 757. Is there also a rivalry within the 757 between Peninsula and Norfolk and Virginia Beach, and also like Hampton, Newport News schools? Is there other rivalries within the 757?
So my high school rival was Kickingham more like so. Going to Hampton High, like you're a rival to every other neighboring school at Hampton, like Hampton Kickingham, Hampton Bethel, Hampton Phoebus. Anytime we played those three teams, it was a rival, like because they just disliked that we were super successful and we were looked at in a different light because Coach Smith won so much. But like Hampton Bethel was a rivalry for me personally because my whole family on my mom's side went to Bethel. And I'm going to Hampton. My cousin Stephanie went to Hampton before I did, but it was like ironic that I'm playing against the school my mother graduated from. But Hampton and Bethel was a huge rivalry. Hampton Kickingham became a rivalry because Kurt Newsom knew how to get wins versus Coach Smith. They even beat us my junior year, and then they should have beat us my senior year when we went undefeated as well national champs. Then Hampton Phoebus with Bill D, that was just a physical football game. So that was the rivalries between those neighboring Hampton schools. And this is not disrespect. We never saw like Newport News schools as a rival because we just feel like we would just beat them. I mean, that's just what it was. And I come from Newport News, but that was just how you carried yourself at Hampton High School. It was like if we played a Newport News school, we're gonna beat them. We just got to worry about our neighboring Hampton schools. And again, it's not a shot because they had some good teams. Like Mike Vick played for Ward. And he had Andre Harrison, phenomenal athletes, but we would beat them 50-something to nothing. You know, just because they didn't have everything that we had as far as the team-wise. So once we played Newport News schools, it was nothing. I think I lost to one Newport News school, and that was Menchville my freshman year, and they had David Macklin. They had a very good team, but that was the only time I lost to a Newport News school.
Yeah. What makes Coach Mike Smith so successful? I mean, I think when you were there, they won 4 state championships in a row. I think maybe you had graduated and
I
won 2
started the
more.
first 2. I was 2, and then they won 2 more after I left.
Yeah, I mean, his record is unbelievable. I think he coached up until like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, what made the guy so successful?
I really feel like his work ethic and the work ethic he instilled in us and the mindset he instilled in us. Like just like I was saying, as far as like when I was talking about the Newport News school, like it wasn't disrespect to anybody we played, but we worked so hard, like as far as our conditioning, as far as how we practice, like you didn't take a knee, you didn't unstrap your chin strap, you only got like 2 or 3 water breaks, and you ran one play until it was perfect, and you didn't run a play to like it's that old saying that we didn't do things to not make a mistake, we did it because we wanted to be perfect. So how we did things, I put it to you like this. We practiced until it just got dark after school. So if we started at 3:30 and it got dark at 8, we'd probably be done at 8. The culture there was just, we're going to outwork you. We're going to outwork you. We never knew that we were more athletic. Like, we never knew that Ronald was that special. I never knew I was this fast. And Derek White didn't know he was this good as a linebacker. Or Juice didn't know he was this good as a running back, or Bobby Blizzard and the list, and George Massenburg, Martin Tens, like the list goes on and on. We were so humbled by him through hard work that we didn't understand how special we were until somebody told us from the outside looking in. Till somebody wrote an article on Ronald that he was just a freshman doing this. We just saw him as Ronald, who worked hard. Like, we didn't understand it. We were just locked in on every single day, we're going to outwork you. We're beating you because we outwork you. We only got 30 to 35 players, so we're just going to outwork you. Our offensive line wasn't that big, but we're going to outwork you. You may think that you can run cover 4 and take the deep pass away from us, but we still going to run the deep pass, and we still going to complete it because we're going to outwork you, and we're going to know how to, approach you. So that's what he really instilled in us, is like, we knew how to work. Every kid that came from our high school, if they went to a college and you asked that college coach, what's the one thing you remember about? We worked. I just felt like we outworked everybody, even though we did have talent, though.
Yeah, yeah, he has the talent, but talent tends to find great coaches. What did Ronald Curry do? His notoriety got so extreme. I mean, because it was right after Terry Kirby played basketball and football.
Yeah.
I mean, the Peninsula was really getting hot. I mean, he always had great athletes there, but the media buzz around him. I remember one time I went to a basketball game down there. I went to see Potomac from up here play in the state final against Hampton, and man, I got there an hour before the game. The game was at the Scope. Man, there was a line around a mile long to get into the game, and it was all, Ronald Curry had this buzz that he brought that I had never seen before in high school basketball in terms of bringing the crowds there. So what did that do for you guys? I'm sure you guys got some limelight too.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, man. Now that I'm older, like, my respect for him and my admiration for him grows even more, because when you're young and 15 to 16 years old, and you seeing the notoriety that he's receiving, and you understand how special he is, at that age, you want it too. So it's like a little bit of envious. I could just speak for me personally. Like, I would be envious, like, hey, man, I want to get write-ups like that. I want people to come, like, clamor over what I'm doing and things of that nature. But looking back on it, man, like, it was tough on him because he couldn't really go places everybody else could. Like, if he went to the mall, he was mobbed. Like, people talk about, like, LeBron James. Like, Ronald Curry was a LeBron before social media, in my opinion. And how he dealt with it, how he stayed an honor roll student and just respectful, and was just the ultimate teammate, very selfless. He wasn't selfish at all. Like, he was the one guy that could come to the huddle like, Hawk, when the last time we threw the ball to you? And I'm like, man, I already got 2 touchdowns and 2 catches. He's like, yeah, but you only got 2 catches. We got to get you the ball again. Like, he was very in tune with everybody else. And if he didn't, quote, play well, and we won 50-0, he was celebrating. Like, if somebody would go look at our highlights, anytime somebody scored, number one was in the end zone, celebrating like he scored. He was one of us. He was just one of the guys. And he respected guys. Like, I was older than him, so he had admiration for me, even though he was the star. He just admired me because I was the older guy, So I got so much love for that guy, man. And that's why I get a little defensive when it comes to why he changed his decision to not come to UVA. He hasn't shared that story, but once they hit a true story why he didn't come to UVA, he went to UNC, I think they're kind of pulled back on, like, the dislike they have for him. If you know the guys, know where you can dislike that guy.
Yeah. He was so there's so much hype surrounding him, and it deservedly so. There was one game when a player named Cliff Hawkins played at Potomac. He ended up going to Kentucky. Good player. And Cliff was a sophomore, and he scored 30 against him in the state playoffs. Now, ordinarily, a player of Cliff Hawkins' magnitude, that wouldn't be a big deal. But because it was on Ronald Curry, they still talk about that game up here. That people wanted to beat Ronald Curry so bad that we still talk about the game. But I'm glad you say he was such a nice guy. He seemed like he was a very quiet
nice guy. Yeah.
How important is it to you, those moments when you won a state championship? I mean, when you play, you won an arena championship, you won a bowl game. You had tremendous success as an athlete. Are the high school successes memorable because so much came afterwards? Do you still look back on those moments and say that was a great moment we won that championship?
Yeah, the high school moments are definitely memorable because it's the springboard to our careers, and everybody wants to be remembered as a champion. But it's nothing like being remembered as a champion in your hometown, because you always go back there. That's your grassroots. And again, I grew up in Newport News, so I understand that I was a Newport News kid that transferred to Hampton City schools. So I always paid my homage to Newport News because I was born and bred in Newport News, but I learned how to truly work at the sport in Hampton. So I'm always conflicted, but since I show so much respect for Bad News and Aberdeen, not Aberdeen, but Anderson Park, that it's like, if I make that change, I better win. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I choose to go to Hampton, I better win. My cousin didn't even win a championship. They lost to Garfield his senior year, I believe. They were up like 14-0 at halftime, and they ended up losing. But he won a national championship with Florida State. So he won up me because I didn't win a national championship at UVA. So
he did okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. All right.
Yeah. Well, I know that you ended up going to UVA, but UVA really wasn't on your radar. You didn't even,
Mm-mm,
probably 4 or 5 years earlier, you didn't even know where really much about it at all.
mm-mm.
But you end up going to UVA. And my guess is you probably went there and met a whole bunch of your Peninsula guys who were already on a team, and you liked it while you were there.
Yeah, Aaron Brooks was there. So my grandmother, Big Mama, God rest her soul, fell in love with Coach Welsh. When she met Coach Welsh in person, when he came to our house and she let him sit in the front on the front on the furniture with plastic. All my black families understand the furniture with plastic is the delicate furniture. You don't just let anybody sit there. And she invited Coach Welsh into the living room because we always was in the den. The living room was what a Christmas tree and the perfect furniture with the plastic was that. She said he could sit on the couch. And when she said he could sit on the couch and he started talking and pitching UVA to me, because I was set to go to Florida. I just happened to just, allow Coach Welsh to come to the house that week. I had just came back from Florida. And then Coach Welsh comes visit me that next week. But yeah, when I visited UVA, Aaron Brooks was there and I grew up with Aaron Brooks. And I ended up just seeing all the Peninsula guys there, man. And I remember when Thomas Jones was played his All-Star game the year before, and he was there. And I just decided to go to UVA because of Aaron Brooks and then because of Coach Welsh. Coach Welsh reminded me of Coach Mike Smith. Coach Spurrier was cool. Coach Spurrier was just a little different. So Coach Welsh was more of like Coach Smith.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Hampton, in the documentary about Allen Iverson, they talk about the race relations down there after the riot. And, I guess it's known to have tension, but how did you perceive the race relations when you went to UVA? Did they seem the same to you, or how would you compare culturally Charlottesville and UVA to Peninsula?
That's the thing. So when I was younger, when I reflect back on just transition from childhood to adolescence to my college days, I realized I lived in a bubble. I had tunnel vision. I'm an only child, so I know how to put blinders on, and that sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad because I could put up a wall and I could start just ignoring people because as an only child and having situations where we struggle, I could create just areas in my head to where I could just block everything out. So when AI got in his trouble, I had no idea it was racially motivated and what the racial tension was where I was at. I went to Hampton High School, it was white and black, but I was just focused on football. And when I got to UVA, I didn't recognize racial stuff because I was just focused on football. I was in a bubble in my mind. And I think that might have saved me in a sense because I was very volatile also. I was super aggressive. So if I would have been aware of racial tensions and shortcomings, I probably would have went off on the deep end. So I think I created this protective bubble to make sure I just didn't go outside the lines. But now that I look back on it, it's amazing that none of that really affected me personally because it was strong. So when people tell me stories about I have former teammates and guys ahead of me even say it was racial stuff when it came to Hampton High that I was oblivious to. And I was right there. They explained like an event. They're like, Hawk, you were right there. And I'm like, I don't remember that. But because I was just one way. So UVA is the same thing, man. I was one way. I was just football, class, McHugh Center. I just know how to get to McHugh Center, back to Tuttle Dorms my first year, and then McHugh Center to Coakley. That's how I operate. I went from class, McHugh Center, back to bed. So I had no idea that it was there.
Yeah.
Now I do.
Yeah. So my son's there now, and it's hard for me to get a sense of whether things have changed because I graduated in 88, and he doesn't. It's hard to compare because I'm not there. He's just describing the things that happened. But you've been involved. You've been on campus. You've been around for the Unite the Right rally, the Mortice Johnson police violence they had, the unfortunate shooting, but that wasn't racial. But but there's been struggles for African Americans on and Charlottesville. Have things changed in your eyes since you've been in Charlottesville, except for the time you were playing arena football?
Change, like, so. So when it comes to change, I think the change that I've seen is that our culture won't allow undertones to go unaddressed. So if there are some undertones or somebody's trying to be slick, they're going to be called out on it. And nobody is hesitant now to really hold somebody accountable for trying to act like they're above or better. I know that there is a collective effort to educate folks, but people are still very uncomfortable with the truth of this country or the truth of the university and the bad things that take place. There's only so many things they allow you to remember and change. It's almost like they got a quota, like, all right, that's enough. We doing too much. It's like, no, like right is right, is wrong. So when I see change as far as one side just not allowing it anymore. But I do see some folks really trying to make that true change and letting folks know, like, how you operate is not right. Like, you got to understand, like, just because you were taught a certain way doesn't mean that it's right. Because a lot of times we always draw back on how we were taught and not realizing that it was wrong. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like, I might have been taught something, but if I've been taught something and it was wrong the entire time, as a human being, I got to be like, I got to change because that's not right.
Yeah. The other day when I was picking my son up from Lambeth, it's fall break, and he said to me, "Dad, there's a Confederate flag in that room over there." And he said, I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, it's the guy has a Confederate. He's had it all semester." And it was interesting because when I went to school there were many Confederate flags in rooms. Mm-hmm. It wasn't something I would have even thought about because it was such a normal thing for people to have. You go to fraternity parties, fraternity houses that, blacks weren't even allowed to even go in the houses. I'm sure they had plenty of flags. So I found it interesting that stood out to him. And I actually, in a way, I found that kind of a positive comment that he made. And it kind of goes into what you're saying. When people see things, they question them. There's more blowback now than there would have been in my day. So
yeah, it's just one of the things that we never understood, the power of our voices. And until you become empowered, you're just going to go with the flow and just say, that's just how it is. Like, you'd be amazed at not just situation, but just in life, how we interact with certain people. And somebody could be a very disrespectful person, and somebody that knows them would just say, oh, that's just so-and-so. Not that it's right or wrong. Basically, that's just them. Just brush it off. But that person won't stand for him. Be like, no, I'm not brushing it off. I'm gonna like let them know. But you still have that person like, man, just let it go. That's just how they are. Versus like understanding, like, why is that okay? You know what I'm saying? Like, why is that okay for somebody just to be the way they are? Like, how do they afford that much grace to be that way and nobody stand up to them like, that's not right? But if this person do something, you ain't gonna say that's just not them. You gonna hold their feet to the fire, hold them accountable, tell them they could be better. Like, I mean, in a sense, that's almost like you saying they're a lost cause. And I just feel like regardless, I'm gonna try to help somebody. Like, you're not gonna be a lost cause because that lost cause ain't gonna hurt me every day.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, we're getting back to the football for a minute. Hawk, did you redshirt your first year there, or did you play your first year?
No, I played.
You played your first year.
I did redshirt.
Was that very rare for your class to play the first year?
I think so. It was three of us. It was myself, Dan Nellis, and Billy Baber that I remember. Well, I don't know if I think Bruno Isabel might have played as well. I remember I was very vocal that I didn't want a redshirt. I was very vocal, like, I don't want, because we played Auburn that first game in '97 here at Scott Stadium, and I got in like the last couple of series, and I remember I was in the locker room just like, if you're gonna redshirt me. If not, play me. Like, I need to play. And I just remember they like, shut up and work. And I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna work, because I felt like I had a really good summer, and I felt like I should have been in. And I was super young and naive and cocky, but I just remember Coach like, Christ, shut the young guy out. He's talking too much. He's complaining too much.
Yeah. Oh, well, you got hurt your first year, and
Yeah, I got hurt versus Maryland. After I scored my first touchdown versus Florida State on a slant route from Dan Nellis. The very next game down in College Park, blocking for Anthony Southern, and he got tackled in the back of me, and I tore 2 ligaments in my right ankle.
So, and you were able to. I mean, you didn't redshirt your first year, so you get to hurry up and rehab, or you didn't want to miss your second year, so you were able to get back full strength in time for your sophomore year.
Yeah, I rehab. I don't think I was 100% that season, but I was good enough to play. You know, like I never really regained my speed that I had from high school until my 4th year, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But it was a long recovery with those 2 torn ligaments.
Yeah. Well, you had that incredible catch against Virginia Tech, which I think we had to win that game to go to the Peach Bowl. I remember, but I also remember about your sophomore year, we beat Auburn at Auburn in the opener.
We beat them.
That was a huge win. Do you remember that game?
Oh yeah, that was a statement game. Nobody gave us a chance to go down there in Auburn and beat them. And our defense made it a point. Our defense carried us. They shut them out. They shut them down. They made them tap. Like they were physical. Wally Rayner and Anthony Poindexter and Kearney and Thweetin, those guys, they was laying the boom to that offense. And we did just enough, on our side to put some points on the board. But yeah, that was a statement game. We took that personal because nobody gave us a shot to win at Auburn because it was an SEC school and how they beat us the year before.
Yeah, well, against Tech, and I heard you tell the story before. I know you had some drops in a game before, and in the Virginia Tech game, we had to drive down the field to win the game, and I know that I guess a player lost his contact. And
Kevin Coffey did.
Yeah, and you went into the game. Tell us what happened.
Kevin was running a corner route and he got blinded by the sun. He reached up to catch the ball, and I think he ended up catching it. Be that as it may, his contact came out, and he was asking for one of the trainers to get his other contact, and I took off like I'm going in. I hadn't caught a pass all game, and it was the last. I felt like our last drive, so I sprinted in. Nobody told me go in. I just sprint in, and we get in the huddle. We call the play. And it's like a mirroring 2 corner routes. It's like a mirror routes, and then allow Casey Crawford to work the middle of the field like a wide option. And when we're breaking the huddle, AB's like, "Hey, Hawk, be ready." I'm like, "Why?" In my head, like, "Why?" I haven't caught a pass all game. Terrence Wilkins got over 100 yards. You might want to go to Terrence. That's in my head because my confidence was shot. Even though I ran into the game, I was still a little nervous. I just dropped the touchdown pass versus North Carolina the week before. And right in front of the hill. And when I came out my break, before I came out my break, Anthony Midget was coming downhill. So he read my route. It wasn't like the greatest route. And when I turned around, I just heard like a whistle. And I heard bink. And when I heard the sound, I just reacted to where the sound was at. Aaron had hit me in the face with the ball. And I just trapped it with my right hand. So I never got my left hand on the ball. I trapped it with my right hand, forked it, like put it between my index finger and my middle finger, cuffed the ball, and took off. Like Aaron, I didn't catch the ball. Aaron stuck it in my face mask.
Yeah. Well, and then your celebration was a tribute, I guess, to I guess it was 2 cousins that
my 2 cousins that got murdered in Isle Wright down here close to Suffolk. Saron and Shanelo Gibson. They got killed, and that was during my rehab, and it was just a tough year. I really went into a depression in that February and March. Just trying to process what all went down with them getting murdered, and that touchdown was just for them because they had planned to come to that game. So that pose didn't have anything to do with football, and that's why I love that they honored that photo because it helps me think about them. They helped me get through my dark place. Like I dealt with depression a lot before that season. So that just reminded me of that was like a culmination of just staying the course and not quitting on myself and not allowing that to just take everything away from me.
Yeah. It's an amazing story because before your media work kicked in, if someone said your name, it was that play and the celebration that would come to mind for me. I'm sure
Yeah.
a lot of players because it was so memorable. Well, your junior year, you had a huge win against Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech was number 7 in the country, and that had to be Georgia Tech. When I was in school, when I was in law school, they were the ones that beat us. We were undefeated, and we're on our way to the we're number 1 in the country. So I always
they beat us in '98 when we were number 7.
They did. Okay, that's right. That's
So
right.
it happened to us too. We were undefeated, and they beat us down there. And we were up at halftime, and Thomas Jones and Antoine Womack each had 100 yards rushing, and we lose.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. So you beat Georgia Tech, and that game was at Georgia Tech too, wasn't it?
No, that was here. So I never beat them down there. I beat them both times here, and both times here, I think they were ranked.
Yeah. Was it? Yeah. I know you guys talked a lot of trash against Tech. I know that was a heated rivalry. There were almost fights in those games. Was it like that? Was it like that with Georgia Tech as well? That kind of rivalry?
Not really. Not really. Yeah. We didn't want to talk too much trash to Joe Hamilton.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. Well, Hawkins, senior year, you end up switching and playing defense, and you had a good year. But how did that come to be? And was it good for your career to play defense?
Yeah, it ended up being the greatest thing that could happen for my career. But I saw Champ Bailey in '98 doing both, and it was a young guy that people may not know that was playing receiver named Billy McMullen that was behind me and was applying a lot of pressure. And I don't know, man. One day I was running indoor track and I was getting faster and I started getting lean. I think I weighed in like 180 pounds. And I remember Coach Welsh was like, "You're getting too small. What are you doing?" And I was like, "Coach, I'm fast. Like I got my speed back." And I was like, "Man, you might want to let me play both ways because I could cover now. Like I'm fast again." And I was just jokingly saying it, but it just kept coming to me when I was asleep. Like, you might want to play some DB. And I remember talking to my mom. My mom was like, if you do this, like, what's your options? I was like, I could possibly just redshirt and then learn the position and then play the next year. And she was like, "Nah, don't redshirt, just play it. You'll be all right. If God putting this on your heart, you'll be okay." And went in to ask Coach Welsh, could I make the change? I was like, "Look, we don't have I felt like we didn't have the same depth at corner. Like we're very deep at receiver. And I just felt like I wanted to help the team. And I initially wanted to do both. And I worked with Coach Bob Price a lot that spring and ended up becoming a starter. Tim Spruill helped me as well, who was the guy starting opposite of me. And Rashad Roberson really pushed me because it was between myself and him for that other corner spot because Tim had the other side locked down. And it worked, man, because it helped with my post-college career. And I ended up having 4 interceptions, and I intercepted the likes of like Woody Dantzler and Chris Winkie and Phillip Rivers. So I wasn't intercepting bum quarterbacks. Like I was intercepting real ACC top caliber guys and go up against the Corn Robinsons and the Rod Gardners and the Snoop Menaces. So again, the competition wasn't lacking. Like when I got my picks, it was against the better guys. So that helped me understand that hard work and my belief in myself paid off.
Yeah. Well, your last year also was George Welsh's last year as a coach. And I forgot when he announced that, but was he slowing down as a coach? Was there a sense that it was time for him to retire?
Nope. I don't know what it came. Like to this day, I'm still torn. And out of respect for the university, I kind of just don't go in on it too much. And even though it's a different administration, don't get me wrong, I really could go in, but out of respect to them, I just felt like they wanted to move in a different direction. George wasn't tired of coaching. He still loved it. And it, ended up working out a couple of years out because they end up winning 8 or 9 games and, got their names put on the back of the jerseys and stuff. Like I was envious on that. As soon as we left, they got their names on the back of the jersey, but Coach Grove came. But yeah, man, Coach Welsh still wanted to coach. Yeah. But, when it's time, I guess.
I thought they did Terry Terry Holland the same way. And I'm just like, it's funny because before George Welsh and before Terry Holland, UVA was terrible for generations. and all of a sudden they come and they expect to win. We're supposed to be 9-2, 10-1 every year. I'm just like, you guys have no memory. But well, look, Hawk, I've kept you a long time, but I do want to hear a little bit about your post UVA journey.
Okay.
We talked about your media, but tell us about trying out for the Chiefs, and then arena football. I mean, that seems really rough to a guy like me. And you're a speed guy, so I would figure Canada would be bigger. The bigger the field, the better, not small field. So tell us about playing for the Chiefs and then your arena football career.
Yeah. So I mean, when I left, had a really good camp with the Falcons in 2001. Room with Mike Vick, who's a childhood friend. I know Virginia fans don't like Mike Vick, but got cut by the Falcons, even though I had a very good camp. And then the Chiefs signed me to the practice squad. Love playing for Coach Dick Vermeil, one of the best human beings I ever met. And stayed there for 2001, went to Europe and won a World Bowl with the Berlin Thunder, was all NFL Europe, was second in interceptions. So I was feeling pretty good coming back to camp for Kansas City. Thought I had a really good camp. And how Coach Vermeil told me, and he was very transparent, when it came down to the final cuts, it was between me and another guy, and all his scouts wanted to keep me, and he wanted to keep a guy that he brought with him from a different team, and his vote trumps every vote. So, but he was very honest with me. He was like, you could play in this league, you could probably get 2 or 3. He said, I think, because with me, he didn't know if I was really a defensive back or a receiver, because I would still do a little both in practice, as far as like practice squad, not in camp. And before he released me out of his office, he said, I have a friend who's starting an arena football, there's a part of a new arena football team. He's going to be the boss of it. I'm going to give him a call. And I'm like, all right, well, who is it? He was like, you probably know his name. His name is John Elway. And I'm like, what? He was like, just be ready for a phone call. And he put the phone call in, and I go out there and have an audition for the new team, make the team, and then play 6 seasons for them and win a Arena Bowl with them, become one of the premier bookends with Rashad Floyd. Everybody always looked at as one of the best dynamic duos in the entire league. And then 2007, I went to Nashville, and that's when I became a person of my own, because I became the lead guy and led the league of interceptions, was the Writers' Defensive Player of the Year, and ended up playing until 2012 with the Georgia Force. So 10 years out of Arena Football League, and it's because of Coach Vermeil pushing me to that league, understanding that my skill sets fit that league. And he basically told me, go to a league where you become a household name and you can make a career, versus chasing a dream that can be taken away yearly because people don't really know what you truly are. Because you're so versatile, they don't know if they can truly invest in you to play one thing. So go there. If you really love that game, you can still make a great living, but it's up to you. Either you chasing the money or you love the game. So you got to make that choice. And Coach Vermeil helped me, really show God that I just love playing football. And he blessed me with 10 years of playing arena football. And I had opportunities to go back to the NFL, like San Diego. They were San Diego then. They now LA Chargers, but they called a couple times. But I just stayed in the Arena Football League.
Yeah. Well, how do you advise young athletes that a lot of your identity is wrapped up in being a football player or an athlete, and at some time it does come to an end for everybody, and a lot of people have a hard time with that because that's all they know. So I'm sure people have asked you about arena or even semi-pro football, maybe even Canada. And it is hard to chase any kind of pro football is tough, but it's not the NFL. It's rough. It's violent. The money's not great. What kind of advice do you give to people that want to try?
I just tell them it's great to set a goal for yourself and strive to reach it, but understand that the business you're choosing, it doesn't last as long as something in the workforce where you're a lawyer or a teacher or a doctor or anything that where you could work 40 or 50 years. Like football is like if you did your palm, you just put your finger in it. That's how much lifespan, much of your life that you're going to get paid for football, this little bit. So can that little bit really help you maintain this lifestyle that you want to be used to? Like, you're not the outliers. You're not going to be the Tom Brady's or the Deion Sanders. Like, stop looking at the outliers. Look at the common guys that are right around you and talk to them. Like, understand that football is not the end all be all. Football is the vehicle to open up many doors for you. So while you're utilizing football, go through those other doors and experience those other parts of life. If you are on campus at UVA, I did this my third year. I went and lived with students. I got away from just living with my teammates. I went and enjoyed the life of campus, because what happens when football is taken away from me? Will I be able to operate? So if you don't allow football to hold dominion over you, you're going to be at so much more peace playing the sport, because it's not your end all be all. And you become a threat to that business, because when they see they just can't hold that job over your head, they get a little nervous. Because if you could cut me, you cut me. Now I'm going to just go do what I've been preparing myself to do post-football. I'm free. I understand. I'm willing to work. I'm willing to dive into the sport. But I understand priorities as far as, this is my time for the sport. Now I'm going to put my time to my family, time to my other loved ones. So that's what I would tell them, man. Use football. Don't allow football to use you.
Yeah. Well, Hawk, you're a very talented guy, a very inspirational guy. I mean, I love your work. I would just remind people to support you on the walkthrough on YouTube, the Ball Hawk Show podcast, Cavalier Countdown, and of course the Lockdown. Yeah, thanks for all you do, man. You make it easy for you Wahoo fans to support the team from afar. So I've enjoyed your work, and I'm really glad you did this. It was actually really nice to meet you, man.
Yeah, appreciate you, man. I actually just saw when Cub shared the interview we did with him, and I really like that. And Cub is a guy that's been a mentor to me. Funny story about me meeting Cub. When I first tried to get into the sports analyst role, I applied for the job the same time Cub did. So we were competitors. And I didn't get the job. Cub got the job. And they offered me to go the high school route. And that's why I even met Cub. So I'm doing high school color commentary. And I remember I did my first couple games. And I'm like, man, I'm trying to meet the dude who beat me out. I want to see how he do it. So I remember listening on the radio, and I'm like, oh, I'm better than him. Oh, I could did that better. Did that better. Right? But when I finally met him, he was just so genuine to me. Like that, like it took, like sometimes we get so competitive that we become envious, versus you could be competitive, but admire somebody when they got something you didn't get, So I've always just paid attention to how he articulates himself and how he sees the game and how his approach to the game. So I'm paying attention to him just as much. He always say he paid attention to me. So when we came to do that show together, like, I'm learning from him the entire time. I'm younger than him, so I respect his voice more than anything, So when I saw that he shared that and you reached out, I was like, oh yeah, most definitely. Because if Cub did your show, I can't say no. Like, you got to be somebody. If Cub stamped you, then I'm like, because I don't know you, but when you reached out, I was like, if Cub did the show, I know he good people.
Oh, thank you. Well, you cover. You guys are perfect compliments on your podcast. You guys just really fit together. But we all have Covington stories. So when I first met Cub, I was in graduate school. I was a pretty good pickup basketball player. I played on the JV team. Okay. And I was on the level of the varsity players, but I just couldn't shoot outside very well. But I could, I'm a fierce competitor. And oftentimes when people play pickup, they play hard until the football players show up or the basketball players show up, and then they don't want to stand up to those guys. I wasn't that guy. I'm a competitor. And as you know, Tony is a fierce competitor. So Tony would come in that gym, and we wouldn't come to blows like that, but we would be at each other. Why are these guys playing so hard? Because neither one of us would back down. And that's how I met Tony. And even after that, we both know each other from pickup basketball. And Tony was a pretty good player. He just was rusty because he was playing football. But yeah, but he was a fierce competitor. So yeah, that's how we met. And so we kept in touch. I have a lot of respect for him. He's underdog. He's a guy that he has used every bit of his God-given ability to in life, and you have to respect guys like that. And
Yeah, his book is phenomenal. His book is inspiration. Like, if you ever need some, like, that dude is just a walking inspiration. Like, he could just say the simplest thing, and you just be like, "Oh, okay." You know, like when he get locked in and he want to inspire, like, bro, he's special, man. Like, I love it that he goes in the locker room because our relationship is different from playing. That's why, like you said, like we play off each other because he'll go in the locker room before the game when the coach is like, he that brave. Like, I'm nervous. I ain't gonna go in there before a game. I'm gonna just wait till they come out and shake their hand. Cub a bust up in there. Let's go, fellas. And I'm just like, Cub, you crazy. He was like, what? Yeah. I'm getting them right. So we think differently and we understand how we operate. But that dude he's my mentor, and I love that dude to death, man.
Yeah. When you guys interview so well that if I know I'm going to interview someone, I won't listen to your interview first because I'll be intimidated. Well, the reason why when you guys start talking with people, it's almost like your brothers in arms, you're both gladiators, and you guys talk on a very comfortable level. It could be intimidating. So I won't even watch. So before I talk to you today, I watch some of your interviews, but with people, like journalists, more like me than like ballers, because it's just easier for me to identify with. So, but
we just like to make it like a conversation, because like we all know what it feels like to be interviewed. There's nothing wrong to be interviewed. But if you see a former player, you're going to look at them a little different and they truly interviewing you versus just like we call it just vibing and talking. Because I can still get an answer out of you, but why not break the ice and demonstrate that I had shortcomings, I struggled. That's why anytime we interview a player and I know I'm about to get on them, I'm like, look, man, I know I dropped the ball. So when you messed up, how did it feel? Because I'm showing them I messed up before I asked you how you felt when you messed up, So when they see that you show that you're vulnerable, they're fine. And like I said, the relationship plays a big role because you can ask those type of questions because you've already did that many times before. That's what makes it easier. But now we definitely appreciate you. We just try to make sure that it's a safe space. I always want folks to know when they come on my platform, on the Lockdown platform, that it's a safe space. And the tough questions are even tough for me to ask you because I don't want to make it seem like I'm coming from left field or trying to put you on the spot.
Yeah. Your work is very special, and it's very unique. And sometimes when I see a guy of your talent, I wonder, would you want to be a media not attached to a team, but you're so good when you as being attached to UVA because you're one of us. So I appreciate you at UVA, and I often wonder how your effect would be if you were just like a media personality, and you weren't really attached to a team because you're. And
I've tried.
What's that?
I've tried, like I put my resume into like ACC network and things like that, but I really just think my calling is just to be with the university to help save my life and help me become a better man. Just being an ambassador for UVA football and just UVA sports. Like I still want to do more than just football, like cover basketball, cover track. Like I wasn't limited. I ran track here, so I wasn't limited to one sport. So if they want to help, if they want me to go and talk about the soccer team and do stuff with the lacrosse team, like I'm here. I don't want people to ever think I'm just limited to football, but I understand that football is something that I specialize in. And I take pride in that. But it's funny you say that because a lot of people always ask, like, would you ever just want to be a regular just person who covers every team? And I do that with the NFL. Like I allow that side of me to come out when I cover NFL sport, the NFL and NBA, but college, I'm just UVA.
Yeah, well, it really works well. We're lucky to have you, but I'm sure one day you may get a chance to try something a little bit different, and you'll do great at that as well. So, but anyway, man, well, hopefully one of these days I can meet you in person. I'm down in Charlottesville quite often, so I don't know how often you live in Charlottesville, right?
Yeah, I live in Charlottesville.
Oh, okay. Oh, cool. Maybe at some point I can meet you face to face.
Yeah, just let me know. Definitely.
Yeah, sure will, man. Yeah, well, look, sorry for keeping you so long. I really enjoyed it.
No problem at all.
Yeah, man. Well, have a good day, and let's keep in touch.
I appreciate you. Thank you, man.
Okay, thanks, buddy. Take care.
All right.